How does versus code debugging use attach or launch? Have you ever wondered how to effectively debug your applications in Visual Studio Code? Understanding the two primary modes of debugging in this popular integrated development environment can make a big difference. Let's break down how Visual Studio Code debugging uses attach and launch modes to help you troubleshoot your code efficiently. First, let's talk about launch mode. In this mode, Visual Studio Code takes charge by starting your application directly under the debugger's control. This means you can set breakpoints right from the beginning, step through your code, and inspect variables as the program runs. To set this up, you create a launch configuration in the launch configuration file. You will need to specify details like the executable path of your program, any runtime arguments, and environment variables. Launch mode is perfect for debugging applications you can start within Visual Studio Code, such as Node.js scripts or compiled binaries. Now, let's move on to attach mode. This mode comes into play when your application is already running outside of Visual Studio Code. Instead of starting the program, the debugger attaches to the existing process. This allows you to inspect the current state of your application and continue debugging. Attach mode is particularly useful for long-running services or processes started by other tools. In the launch configuration file, you can specify the process id or choose from a list of running processes. For example, when debugging Node.js applications, you can attach to processes that were launched with debugging flags like inspect. In practical terms, the launch configuration file usually contains separate sections for both launch and attach configurations. This setup allows you to switch between starting a program under the debugger or attaching to an existing process with ease. For C and C++ debugging, you will need to specify the path to the executable in both configurations, but attaching will also requiring the process id to connect. Node.js debugging has a feature called auto-attach, which automatically connects the debugger to Node.js processes launched from Visual Studio Code's integrated terminal. This feature streamlines the attach process, making it easier for you to get started. Keep in mind that for attach mode to work, the running process must have debugging enabled. This usually means starting the process with flags that allow debugging, and the debugger needs access to the corresponding source code and symbol files. Knowing when to use launch versus attach can significantly improve your debugging workflow in Visual Studio Code. Use launch mode when you want to control how your application starts and debug from the very beginning. On the other hand, use attach mode when your application is already running, and you need to connect the debugger to diagnose issues in real time. Both modes are configured through the launch configuration file, which is essential for customizing your debugging environment in Visual Studio Code.